Okay, guys. So it's being recorded right now. Just making sure. Yes. Okay, so welcome everyone. We are gathering here again, wonderful group of friends. And before we get to Ivanna's amazing webinar, I just want to say that this event has been organized as part of the weekly fasting WhatsApp group. And the purpose of this group is to assist our members on our personal cleansing, purification, and health journeys by cultivating the habit of fasting every week between 24 and 36 hours. So we have, as for now, we have around 100 members from all over the world, and we fast together and thus creating support, thus creating an amazing group spirit, and it really works. So it's been for the first time for many people that this habit of weekly fasting really getting ingrained in them. And if any one of the viewers resonates with this idea and wants to join the group, there will be my WhatsApp number below the video. You're welcome to send me a WhatsApp message with your name, and I will happily add you to the group. Okay, so that being said, now I really want to welcome Ivanna with her webinar.
Hi, Eric. Thanks. So, are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, I just wanted to first make a quick sort of public service announcement because I don't think some people watched one of the videos when we talked about questions and how questions will be answered and so forth. So, me doing these webinars is sort of part of the way I offer myself to be of service. And, this is when I choose to sort of give and volunteer my time. But once I sort of sign off from this webinar, I will no longer entertain questions, be it through Facebook or, or the WhatsApp or YouTube. And so please guys don't get, offended or, upset. It's just that I can't spend this much time dedicating to people answering questions. So as Arik said, if you cannot book a personal session with me, then your best next thing is to join the fasting group, because then you will be notified when these webinars are happening, and so you can join in and ask your questions then, okay? So that's just that. And, I've been wanting to do a webinar on dry fasting for some time now, because I keep seeing questions with regard to dry fasting that suggest to me that most people still don't have a very clear idea about the mechanism and the order or chronology, if you will, of this incredibly powerful process. And I don't know why we haven't dedicated a webinar to this topic yet, considering that this is a fasting group. So today I want to go in depth into what dry fasting is, how it works, and how to properly prepare for it. And of course, how to come out of it and when to avoid it. I'm sure you hear people talk about various forms of fasting. After all, this is a fasting group. People talk about mono fruit fasting or juice fasting, water fasting, and dry fasting. But the problem is that only about half of the things that I just listed are actually considered fasting. Because if you're eating fruit, you're not fasting. You are on a fruit diet. If you're drinking juice, you're not fasting. You are on a liquid diet. fasting by definition means abstinence. It's about eliminating digestive processing. Now, I've had people who said to me, but wait, how can this be? I get so much mucus and so many parasites out on my juice fast, and I also have so many healing crises. And I said, yeah, and I'm sure that you do. I am not saying that you cannot get your body cleaned up and healed while eating fruit or drinking juice. You can, and lots of people do it all the time. And you also don't have to fast to heal. What I am saying, however, is that you cannot fast and drink juice at the same time, because those are two contradictory concepts. I am simply making a distinction between what fasting is and what fasting isn't. There are really only two types of fasting: water and dry. Water fasting means that you're only drinking plain, clear, unadulterated water. If you're drinking water that's been mixed with herbs, like tea, for example, you're no longer fasting. If you're drinking plain water with lemon juice, you're still not fasting. And some hardcore professionals even disagree with water fasting being, in fact, a true fast. If you recall the video Arik translated for one of these webinars where a Russian doctor was talking about dry fasting. And he said that if you are drinking water, you're not truly fasting, you are on a diet. The reason for this is that when you're drinking water, your GI tract is still engaged, at least in some level of work and processing. Based on the feedback and questions I received through YouTube or my website or Facebook, I kind of find it shocking how many people don't understand what a fasted state really means. For instance, I know people who think that they are dry fasting while taking herbs and doing enemas. And then they don't understand why they're not getting good results. If you're dry fasting, nothing goes into any hole in your body, okay? Period. There's no herbs or enemas or douches. If you're doing enemas, you're water fasting, because the body absorbs water directly through the colon wall. Taking herbs on a dry fast is the equivalent of having small amounts of lettuce or kale on a daily basis. Because what are herbs? Herbs are plants. They're vegetables, essentially. So what kind of fasting could you possibly be engaged in if you're consuming vegetables, albeit in much smaller quantities? Personally, I can't even understand how you're getting the herbs into your body. Because if you're taking liquid tinctures, then by definition, there's nothing dry about it. And if you're ingesting dry herbs in capsules or in powdered form, then how are you getting them down into your body without water? So this is sort of a mystery to me. I don't understand this whole concept. I have also been asked if it's okay to take a sip of water while dry fasting. Well, no, because as soon as you have a sip of water, you have broken your fast. And even if you immediately resume your abstinence from food and water, you have broken continuity. And now you have to start the process all over again. It's like when you're watching a YouTube video where you can see that progress line on the bottom, which shows you the timeline and where you are within that timeline relative to the length of the video. So taking a sip of water is like hitting the stop or the pause button, except when you get back to the video, instead of picking up right where you left off and continuing your viewing experience, the video resets itself, forcing you to start from the very beginning. You're going to have to go through all the preliminary steps that you'd already gone through in order to get back to the place where you left off before interrupting your fasting experience by taking that sip of water. Now, granted, you'll move through all these preliminary steps much faster the second time around, but still, you will have lost momentum. Even if you're doing what's known as soft dry fasting, you are still undermining yourself if you're rinsing your mouth. Having water contact with skin is one thing, but putting it into your mouth where it very quickly gets absorbed through the mucosa is quite another. If you can avoid rinsing your mouth, you'll get a lot more out of your dry fast. And this is exactly what Dr. Fulano says as well. No water in the mouth. Now, if your mouth gets too yucky with the film and that mucus-like coating, if you will, you can use a dry tongue scrubber, or you can use a clean, dry towel over your fingertip to brush the residue off your teeth. But I would avoid water in the mouth altogether. For those of you who may be familiar now with Satmarga, who dry fasted for 50 days, you may see that he is more relaxed about cleansing his mouth and briefly rinsing it out. But you have to understand that he is operating on a completely different level. He's not doing it for healing. For him, fasting is about connection to the source and attaining altered state of consciousness. It's also about testing his personal boundaries and the body's capabilities. When you're fasting as long as he does, after a certain point, the body sort of has done pretty much everything that it needed to do. And of course, because you have so much time, it will still be afforded the opportunity to get right back on track with the healing, because of the extremely long duration. But if you're only able to fast for 3 or 4 days, then for you, every minute counts. So you want to maximize the effectiveness of your fast and get as much out of it as possible. And avoiding water in your mouth on a soft, dry fast is going to help you do that. Another thing that people have asked me is whether it's okay to do oil pulling during a dry fast. No, it's not. Once again, your mucosa is highly absorbent. Remember, nothing goes into any orifice, and this includes eyes, because this is where water gets absorbed very quickly as well. Please understand that if your body has to absorb, digest, utilize, or process any chemistry, it is in a completely different mode than it is when you're fasting. Let me repeat that. If you're consuming, absorbing, digesting, or utilizing any type of chemistry, you are not allowing your body to enter the true fasted state. And the only way for you to trigger your body into initiating that deep cleansing and healing protocol is through complete abstinence. If you add just one extra thing, you're completely changing the equation. You're completely changing the conditions within your body, and therefore it's modus operandi. This is the case where the tiniest change results in a total change of process and therefore outcome. Now, we know that it's not possible to avoid processing chemistry altogether. And of course, water is chemistry too. But we're trying to eliminate as much interference as possible and bring it as close to zero as possible. You know that the body absorbs through the skin whatever's in the air, including water. We're also inhaling water when we breathe. However, when we're taking moisture in from the air, the body will only take the bare minimum of what's necessary for its basic functions, as opposed to the excess water it will absorb as a result of taking a soak in the tub or taking a really long shower. This is also the reason why it's always preferable and recommended that you go through an extended dry fast in a natural setting where the air is cleaner and contains more moisture. If you're in the city conditions, you're going to inhale and absorb some chemistry that's not so great. I do dry fast at home in New York, but I also have really good air purifiers in every room, and I stay at home for the most part. But still, fasting in an urban environment is far from ideal, and it simply cannot compare to doing it in the mountains near a beautiful lake or a river. But at the moment, this is the best I can do. So, you know, what can I say? So, to clarify, when water fasting, you're only drinking plain, unadulterated water. And when dry fasting, no substance of any kind goes into any hole, regardless of what or whether you're swallowing it or not. I am sort of a purist and belong to the category of those hardcore people who are into absolute or hard dry fasting. This is where there's no skin contact with water. I also avoid any creams, lotions, ointments, or oils because, once again, our skin eats. Personally, I have never resonated with water fasting because, for one, it's a more diluted version of fasting, and we mean this quite literally. And two, it takes 3 times longer on water to get to the stage of deep cleansing and repair than it does when you go dry. And that's why it's said that dry fasting is 3 times more effective. Another disadvantage of water fasting is that on water, both fat and muscle degrade in equal proportions. But during dry fasting, fat is used as the primary source of energy, and muscle is largely preserved, unless, of course, you run out of fat, in which case the body will start breaking down muscle tissue and converting protein into carbon. The one upside and advantage of water fasting is that it's a lot less restrictive, and you can basically carry on with your life business as usual, which is not exactly the case with dry fasting. The other reason I don't care for water fasting is that I have always had a negative relationship with water due to chronic edema. Since childhood, I have been so acidic that drinking any amount of water or fluids in general would make me swell up like a Thanksgiving parade float. So for most of my life, I have been dreadfully avoiding it. And that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I gravitate so strongly to dry fasting. Most people, myself included, also find that going dry is actually much easier than water fasting. The reason for this is that as long as your GI tract is engaged, even if it's only processing water, it will keep triggering hunger and desire for food. But when you remove both food and water, you stop thinking about food, and your focus is now more on drinking and thirst. So in some ways, it's much, much more tolerable. I'm also an all or nothing type of person, which some people may find extreme, but extreme is where I happen to find my comfort zone. I want to emphasize that just because I or someone else practices this type of fasting, it doesn't mean that I am encouraging anyone else to follow in my footsteps. I'm simply sharing my experience and what I have learned so far. So this is not for everyone. And please don't think that not being able to go as long without food and water makes you any less amazing or will prevent you from getting healing. As I said, I'm a bit of an extremist. I'm also not afraid of death, which has given me the freedom to experiment on myself in many different ways. A couple of years ago, I had an incredibly transformative and transcendent experience of indescribable expansion of consciousness and beauty and unconditional love, which made me realize that there's absolutely nothing in this world and in this reality that could ever come close to that experience. There's no love or relationship, be it with your children or a soulmate, that could ever compete or compare to this silly little simulation that we call our earthly life. And since I know now without a shadow of a doubt that the soul is indestructible, I'm not at all worried about death. So for a number of years now, I've been living my life as an experiment of sorts. I'm not proud of the fact that I have done some stupid things along the way while I was trying to get healthy. And in many instances, I ended up hurting myself. For example, I drank industrial bleach, also known as the miracle mineral solution, or MMS. I also drank hydrogen peroxide, which gave me terrible alkaline burn. But so far, dry fasting has been nothing short of magical and amazing. My love affair with dry fasting began more than 3 years ago when I switched to fruitarian lifestyle and was working to get my kidneys to filter. Not only did it help me get kidney filtration, but it also transformed my life in many different ways. It was the best thing I ever did, and for me, there really is no going back. Now that I have gotten to 11 days and I have found other people who have gone as long as 50 days on a dry fast with excellent results, I plan on continuing to challenge myself and pushing the envelope to extend the duration of my fasting to see what my body is really capable of. There are people on this planet, as most of you know, who practice chronic living. This means that they consume no food or water whatsoever. And they survive by absorbing the source energy directly into their body and into their energy system. Personally, I don't have any ambitions to pursue this lifestyle at the moment, as I'm not willing to give up the simple pleasure of enjoying watermelon or mango. But I don't know what may happen in the future, because it seems that my body does keep nudging me toward going longer periods without food and water. So I don't know, I guess we'll see. But let's get back to dry fasting and why it's so incredibly powerful. When we remove food and water, we are artificially forcing our body into the state of extreme stress, where its built-in survival mechanisms get activated. Our immune system is awakened like a sleeping giant, and all of the body's internal resources are mobilized, sort of like organizing the army, the military forces at the start of a war. The body is forced to prioritize its resources by shifting from exogenous nourishment to endogenous. This means that instead of getting food and water from outside, it will cannibalize and use its own structures and tissues to extract water and nutrition in order to support its vital functions. This process is called autophagy, not to be confused with autolysis, which many people do. Autophagy literally means self-eating. Both autolysis and autophagy are involved in cell destruction through the action of their enzymes that are released by the cell lysosomes. The difference, however, is that autolysis is what happens when a cell dies a natural death through apoptosis or as a result of an injury, where the body simply cleans up the resulting mess. Autolysis is what happens when the body dies and is then decomposed. So the process of decomposition is initiated through autolysis, where the cell enzymes leak out of the cell membrane and begin the process of breaking down their own structures. But with autophagy, there is, how can I put it? There is intelligent intent, where the body scours out and selectively chooses inferior cells to destroy and use their material for food. And these are cells that otherwise could and would have continued on. But the body, in its infinite intelligence, knows that atypical or damaged or mutated cells, if you will, use 3 times the energy that healthy cells do. And so the body says, nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to waste our limited precious resources on the feeble, unproductive cells. Instead, we're going to use them for fuel. And whatever remaining parts of the cell are salvageable, they're then utilized for rebuilding. So this is what autophagy is in a nutshell. The body creates an envelope called the autophagosome in order to sequester the cell or cells, plural, that are to be destroyed in order to protect any of the surrounding areas. Then lysosomes are released from the cell membranes, which through their enzymatic action dissolve and digest defective parts of the cell, and creating life-sustaining energy in the process. Whatever is healthy is left intact and recycled for the creation of a new replacement cell. Now, at low levels and on a much smaller scale, autophagy happens when we sleep. But if you eat a large meal before bed, you are short-circuiting this process, not allowing the regeneration to take place, because autophagy is activated by limitations in glucose, amino acids, and oxygen. Excess protein and saturated fats impair autophagy because they require too much cellular energy to digest. And that's why one of the worst ways people sabotage and undermine the efficacy of their dry fasts is by overeating in the days leading up to those. So the beauty and elegance of autophagy is that there's very little or hardly any byproduct that's left over that would require elimination. To better understand the difference in the detox process between water fasting and dry fasting, think of it in terms of home renovation. Let's say that you want to remodel your kitchen. Everyone knows that you can't install a new kitchen on top of the old one. You first have to demolish and tear down the existing cabinets and appliances. And as you go to work by smashing those cabinets with a hammer and pulling them off the wall, you are creating quite a mess. Even though you now have created a blank slate, opening up the space for your new beautiful cabinetry and countertops, you cannot move forward with the renovation until all of the old torn up cabinets and appliances that are scattered all over the floor are picked up and taken out of the way. All of these byproducts of the demolition have to be picked up, loaded into the dumpster, and then taken to the landfill. So this is kind of what water fasting is. Now imagine a different scenario. You're still remodeling your kitchen, but instead of doing a conventional demo where you're smashing things with a hammer, you enclose and insulate the old kitchen with a cover, and then initiate a chemical process where a corrosive substance is released that selectively dissolves everything that you want gone. And it only dissolves that which you need to get rid of. So if you have appliances, let's say, that are in good condition, they get preserved and can be later incorporated into the new kitchen design. And all you have to do when this is done is to remove that protective cover, and voila, you're ready to install your new kitchen. There's no junk to clean up and toss into the dumpster, which then needs to be taken to the landfill. So this is the beauty of dry fasting. During dry fasting, our cells turn into self-contained thermodynamic incinerators. Whatever is damaged beyond repair gets burned for fuel, and whatever can be salvaged is recycled and then used for rebuilding. And all of this is accomplished with hardly any byproducts or any extra mess. So in my view, it's a superior, condensed version of the repair mechanism that's much more efficient than what happens during water fasting, which employs a different model of waste removal with many more interim steps in between. With water fasting, the body has to bring water, which is a solvent, into the tissues and cells to flush out the toxins that are trapped there, and then moves this waste via the lymphatic pathways to be eliminated both by the bowels and the kidneys. But with dry fasting, instead of washing the cell where the dirty water then has to be routed through an entire network of eliminative channels while making pit stops at the septic tanks, which are your lymph nodes, instead the body just eats the cell on the spot and then replaces it with a new healthy structure. So you see how dry fasting is a neater process, and it's also easier to tolerate because your detox reactions are actually milder on a dry fast than they are on water fast. Another benefit of dry fasting is that it gets the inflammation out like nothing else, because inflammation cannot exist without water. Inflammatory response is the body's immune response to acidosis, where water is rushed to the sites of injuries, trauma, or acidic deposits to help clear them away. And this is when you see redness, swelling, and angry skin eruptions. But when you take water out of the equation, all of those symptoms go away. Dry fasting also kills off all kinds of pathogens, because total absence of water makes it impossible for them to survive. And so these are the many benefits and advantages of dry fasting that make it undoubtedly superior to water fasting. Now, I want to talk about the fasting timeline and the internal processes that take place during various points throughout the fast. For those who do intermittent dry fasting anywhere between 16 and 20 hours, if you think that you're accomplishing any sort of deep detoxification, I'm sorry to have to burst your bubble, but that is not the case, especially if your diet consists of denser foods like veggies or worse, cooked foods. And if you're on a keto diet, or God forbid, standard omnivorous diet, which includes animal products, you really shouldn't attempt dry fasting longer than 24 hours, or you can seriously hurt yourself. Based on my interactions within the group, I assume that most people here are raw vegans. If your diet isn't at least 80% raw and vegan, you should not attempt extended dry fasting, because it may kill you, literally. I suggest that anyone who wants to pursue extended dry fasting as a part of their lifestyle properly prepare their body before wading into this territory. What does this mean? Well, first, you need to achieve a certain level of intracellular hydration. And this doesn't mean drinking lots of water, because water by its very nature is acidic. H2O has 2 atoms of hydrogen, which is an acid, and 1 atom of oxygen, which is alkaline. Water doesn't hydrate, it is a solvent. But if you squeeze some lemon juice into your water, all of a sudden you have hydration. Why? See, when we talk about hydration, we're talking about the lymphatic system, which is a lipid-based system. And water, of course, can't hydrate an oily substance because it's a lot less dense and it doesn't have the appropriate viscosity to be able to act upon the heavier lymphatic fluid. As an analogy, think of solidified coconut oil, where the oil represents agglomerated hardened lymph. If you pour water on the oil that is the same temperature, it will just sit on top and have virtually no impact on the hardened oil. So the only way you can mobilize and hydrate stagnant lymph is through astringent action. This astringency is found in the chemistry of raw fruits and veggies, with fruits being far superior in this respect, especially the citruses and fruits like grapes and watermelon. That's why I recommend that you are raw, if not on all fruit, then a minimum of 80% fruit for at least 3 months. During this time, you should also be actively cleansing your bowels with herbs, binders, and colonics. The goal is to unload as much of the body's toxic burden as possible. Cleaning out the gut is going to have the greatest impact on your ability to dry fast for longer periods of time. And then when you're about 2 months in, you might consider doing a liver flush. I also recommend that people candle their ears. Use about 4 candles per ear. The entire 3 months of this preparation, you should be strengthening your kidneys and adrenals with herbs. Adrenal support is crucial here because if your glands are too weak and you go into a fast where they're not being stimulated or artificially propped up by food or herbs, you're going to find yourself getting extremely weak, lightheaded, and dizzy. What's worse is that you may also have problems with breathing, which means that you're not going to be able to fast for very long. And once you begin your foray into consistent, extended dry fasting, you're going to have to stay on a raw diet because eating cooked food is going to hold you back by limiting how long you can last on a dry fast. Cooked food is acidic and dehydrating, and therefore a diet of cooked food is incompatible with prolonged dry fasting. You simply won't be able to progress beyond a certain level. So if you're interested in this lifestyle, you're going to have to make some permanent changes to your diet. Though I find that most people who are attracted to this lifestyle end up doing so naturally. The more you fast, the more food you will feel compelled to eliminate from your daily diet. Satmarga, for example, outside of his fasting marathons, only eats 3 days out of the week, and that's predominantly liquids. And then, in addition to that, he does at least 1 day where he goes fully dry. There was a period in my life a couple of years ago where for nearly 6 months, I only ate 3 to 4 days a week. And I dry fasted the remaining 4 to 5 days continuously. That's a block of 120 hours nonstop dry for 6 months straight, every single week. And not only did I not have any issues, but I felt great. You see, the more you fast, the more you begin to realize how little food and nutrition the body actually requires. Additionally, once you make fasting a permanent and consistent part of your life, the body begins to anticipate those periods of abstinence. And so it starts creating reserves of vital nutrients for future use. Another thing I want to say to sort of reinforce the importance of the preliminary detox before venturing into dry fasting is that doing 85 days on juice after having been dry fasting consistently for close to 3 years, where I was comfortably doing 5 consecutive days, took my dry fasting to a whole different level. It was after that solid food vacation that I went to 7 and then 9 and now 11 days. Not only is a liquid diet detoxifying and a great way to clean up your gut, but it's also very hydrating. So if you're serious about extended dry fasting, I would recommend that at some point you do an extended juice feast, not fast, juice feast, because the more you can clean up and detox your body, the easier it will be to go without water for longer periods of time. So now that you have primed the pump, so to speak, and prepared your body by hydrating and cleaning it up to the best of your ability, you can start with 24 hours and then begin to slowly and incrementally work your way up to extend this fasting window. Personally, I stuck to 24 hours once a week for 6 months before deciding to increase the duration of my fast. Aside from the general detox that you're going to do in preparation for fasting. There's additional prep that you're going to have to do before any and every dry fast that exceeds, let's say, 36 to 48 hours. One of the biggest mistakes people make going into a fast is that they're overcompensating by eating too much beforehand. And if you do that, you're not going to like how you feel while fasting. My suggestion is that for no less than 3 days before the fast, you go on a liquid diet of juices, preferably fruit juices, because they're much less dense and easier to digest. During this time, you should also be actively unloading your GI tract with herbs and enemas. Someone I know said that she cannot go on all liquids because she swells up, and she cannot do enemas because of her limited mobility due to scoliosis. So if you have a similar situation, I would recommend watermelon and pear juices, not together, separately. Watermelon is not going to give you edema because it's a diuretic and it actually relieves swelling. And pear juice is an intestinal cleanser, but you have to be prepared because it's very, very strong. I always tell people that if they're going to drink pear juice, they better not have plans that day because they're going to spend it on the toilet. You should drink at least 20-24 ounces of pure fresh pressed pear juice at a time to get this effect. And pear juice, by the way, is also a very strong diuretic. So if you cannot do enemas, the next best thing is to clean yourself out this way. And even if you do get a little swelling from the juice, so what? When you go into the dry fast, all of that edema is going to come out very quickly. But the main thing is that it's very important that you go into your dry fast with an empty intestine. Experienced fasters may even do a day or two on plain water. Now, I know that Dr. Filanov doesn't recommend doing a water fast before going dry, but it's not because it's inherently bad or dangerous. He's simply coming from the perspective of working with people, most of whom are not used to going without food for such long periods of time. And in his medical fasting practice, the standard duration of the fast is 11 days. His concern is that if someone who, aside from the mandatory 3-month preparation, has been eating the standard omnivorous diet and isn't normally used to abstaining from food, these people will most likely are not going to be able to endure the additional 11 days on a dry fast. And because in this case, dry fasting is the #1 priority, Filanov wants to ensure that his patients don't run out of steam and still have enough stamina to complete the full 11-day protocol. If you look at Satmarga, he does about 10 to 13 days on water before transitioning into a long dry fast. But his body is so well adapted to abstinence from food that it simply is not an issue for him. So if you do have that type of stamina and endurance, doing a short water fast before going dry will significantly enhance your dry fast by flushing the body more thoroughly. Okay, so you've done your 3-month prep. And now that you're good and ready, you can finally start your fast. So you may begin your countdown, let's say at 12 noon, but it's not like in sports where you click your stopwatch and say go, and the body immediately jumps into the action. No, it can take quite some time to actually get into the fasting state. First, your body is going to have to digest the last thing you consumed before you started your countdown, before your fast began. And depending on what that meal consisted of, is going to determine how long it's going to take for your body to move on to the next stage in its preparation for the fast. So if you had a watermelon juice, you're going to burn through it very quickly. But if you had a big salad with leafy greens and avocado, it's going to take significantly longer to digest. This means that your body is now going to waste a few hours on processing that meal, which of course is going to result in glycogen loading, because whatever excess energy the body can't use from food, it will store as a reserve in your liver as glycogen. And if there is even more energy than the liver can accommodate, the remainder of it will be stored as fat. So after having finally digested your last meal, the body is going to have to burn that excess glycogen that it's stored in the liver. And this process can take 12 to 16 hours. And women generally fall in the top end of that window because female hormones make us less efficient at utilizing glycogen. Now, there are some shortcuts. One way to speed up the depletion of glycogen is intense physical activity. 90 to 120 minutes of strenuous, heavy-duty exercise will burn off your glycogen reserves. Once glycogenolysis is complete, the body switches to endogenous feeding by starting to break down fat into water and sugar for energy. And this is when you go into ketosis, where your blood gets flooded with acetoacetate, acetone, and beta hydroxybutyrate, which are the acidic byproducts of ketosis. As a result of acidifying the blood with these ketones, you may start feeling nauseous, you may get a headache, you can become fatigued, and a lot of people get really irritable. It's also very common at this stage to start smelling of acetone from both your body and your breath. This is known as the first acidic crisis, and it can last a couple of days. And it's not until this first acidic crisis passes that the body finally initiates the deep cleansing and repair protocol. It may take anywhere from 1 to 3 days to get to this point, and the duration depends on a number of factors, such as the overall toxic burden of the body, how much fat you have, how heavy or dense your diet has been in general, and especially in the days leading up to the fast. Your level of intracellular hydration and the body's familiarity with the fasting is also going to play a role here. So if you're looking for serious healing, you have to get past the ketosis stage and then give your body additional time so that it can actually get some work done. And the quicker you can get through the glycogenolysis and the first acidic crisis, the more time you'll have left for cleaning, repairing, and healing. If you're only doing 16 to 24 hours, all you're really doing is, yes, giving your body much needed rest. You are sensitizing it to insulin, reducing inflammation, maybe getting rid of edema and helping your kidneys to open up to filtration. But that's about it. So if you're looking for serious deep healing, you're going to have to keep extending your fasting window past the 3-day mark. Of course, this is something that you have to do incrementally, going a little longer each time. Autophagy can start as soon as 16 hours into the fast under ideal conditions. However, when we say that autophagy starts at 16 hours, what it means is that only a limited select number of cells initiate the process at this point. And as time goes on, it picks up speed, spreading across a wider cross-section of tissues and organs. For example, autophagy has been detected in neutrophils, which are the white blood cells that help heal damaged tissues and infections, starting at 24 hours of fasting. After the 24-hour mark, this process expands and becomes magnified in liver and brain cells after 48 hours. But keep in mind that this timeline represents optimal conditions and scenarios. Whereas in reality, it can take up to 3 days just to get things started. I have had some fasts where the first acidic crisis alone, the so-called Keto Flu, lasted upwards of 36 hours. And the duration of these crises will vary from fast to fast. Sometimes they can be really intense, where the headache is so bad you can hardly stand it. And sometimes it, comes and goes as a light, dull ache. So you're gonna see fluctuations here. Now, once autophagy is in full progress, you're likely going to experience other unpleasant healing or cleansing reactions. It's very common for your vision to worsen, where all of a sudden it becomes cloudy, blurry, or you get a lot of floaters in your eyes. This is normal, and it goes away as the fast progresses. You may begin to experience this symptom within 3 to 5 days, and then see it completely resolved by day 7 or 9, where your vision actually becomes much better and clearer than it was before the fast. The reason for these visual disturbances is that during dry fasting, the blood gets much thicker as it loses volume due to dehydration. Other symptoms of thick blood may include lack of energy, weakness, fatigue, dizziness, increased heart rate, and shortness of breath. And so this thickening of the blood is one of the reasons you feel kind of lackluster and blah during the fast. These symptoms will be even more pronounced if you also have weak adrenal glands. And unfortunately, most people do. Excessively thick blood, where there is an abnormal increase in blood cells, can be dangerous because it could lead to strokes and tissue damage. That's why people who have this condition to begin with, which is also known as hypercoagulation, should not dry fast. Okay? So if you have thick blood, you should not dry fast. Stick with water. Thickening of blood also forces the heart to pump harder, increasing the heart rate. When the heart rate gets too high, the pumping is more shallow, and the volume of blood is reduced because of this. This means that you're not going to be able to get enough blood supply to your organs and tissues, depriving them from oxygen. And that's why Filanov says that if your resting heart rate, that's your pulse, gets to 120 beats per minute or higher and does not come down, you have to break your fast, because this is where you're entering dangerous territory. Because thickening of the blood impairs blood flow and therefore oxygenation. It's important that you move and you exercise during your fast. Regular movement and exercise are imperative because they improve delivery of oxygen and nutrients to the cells by increasing blood flow to the vital organs. Exercise also improves the transport of degraded inflammatory metabolites and waste matter. In other words, it helps to keep your lymph moving. Aside from encouraging physical activity, Dr. Filhona also utilizes daily massage, cupping, and even leeches. I saw this in one of the videos on YouTube. There was a couple that went to his retreat and they documented some of their journey. So it's kind of neat to see a bunch of people living in cabins, out in nature, doing all kinds of crazy things like putting leeches on their body. But, my last fast, I exercised every single day. And I also utilized the foam roller. And I can tell you that it made a tremendous difference in how I felt. So, what I want to address is that the same person that asked about enemas and what to do if she can do them said that she can't exercise because she has physical issues. So what can she do in this case? Well, do massages, do dry brushing of the skin, stimulate the neurolymphatic points that run along your spine. And when you massage them in the clockwise direction only. So there are other things you can do to sort of keep the blood and lymph moving. And when we say exercise, it doesn't have to be something really difficult or something that requires exertion. Holding a plank for a minute is enough. That tension in the muscles mobilizes the blood, mobilizes lymph. So you can do modified versions of exercises. It's not about building muscle or developing strength. This is about getting circulation moving and also moving your lymph. As your body cleanses and repairs itself, you can have old health conditions flare up as a part of the healing reactions. And the location where your symptoms occur indicate what issues your body is working on. For example, one of the recurring symptoms I have during fasting is a sore throat. Each time, however, I feel it localized in different areas. So it's never the same. Sometimes it's in my tonsils, sometimes it's in the back of my throat, and other times it's in the esophagus. You can experience a wide range of healing reactions that are unique to your individual makeup. It all depends on where in your body you have problems, as well as your inherent weaknesses. I have really weak kidneys, and so I experience kidney pain on every single dry fast. The last 2 fasts I did, and this is after 3 years of fasting, my kidney healing finally came to a head. On day 9 of the 9-day fast, I started passing kidney stones. And that little fun activity went on for about 13 hours. Then halfway into day 8 of my 11-day fast, I had similar symptoms come back. But this time, I wasn't passing stones per se. The eliminations were more like sand in texture. But still, it was the same burning and frequent urination. Though this time, it wasn't as intense. And it only lasted about 4 or 5 hours. So it looks like the body had dealt with the bulk of the problem during the 9-day fast, and finished up whatever was left unresolved during the 11-day fast. Now, days 8 through 11 are significant because they represent another important demarcation. If the first 3 days bring on the acidic crisis that initiates the healing process, the last 3 days of the 11-day medical dry fast close out the process with the second crisis. This is when the body digs deep and gets to the very core of the problem. It's crucial to experience and see the second crisis to completion for a successful conclusion of the fasting protocol. You should never ever break your fast in the middle of a healing crisis. Doing so stops the healing process dead in its tracks, which in my view is a tremendous waste. If it took me 9 days without food and water just to get to the place where my body got into my kidneys, stopping at that point would basically cancel out all the work that I had put in just to get there. The problem is that we've been conditioned to believe that if something feels unpleasant, it has to be bad or something isn't working. And so we often undermine our own healing out of fear or to simply avoid unpleasant sensations in our body. But as uncomfortable as it may get, you have to push through this healing crisis because that's the only way to achieve complete remedy. Unfortunately, you can't get well without feeling ill. And if you believe otherwise, you're deluding yourself. Now, since we're on the subject of kidney stones, I think this is a good opportunity to insert a question that someone asked within the group. As you can see, I'm trying to multitask and incorporate as many questions as I can within the context of our discussion. I don't know who said this, but I had to laugh because the person thought that a change in weather caused them to get a kidney stone during their dry fast. Well, let me assure you that weather and the levels of air humidity have absolutely no bearing on kidney stones. And your dry fast didn't cause them either. You see, up until the moment when I started passing stones, I actually had no idea that I even had them. Kidney stones are formed as a result of uric acid interacting chemically with excess calcium. Uric acid is a byproduct of protein metabolism. So if you eat or had eaten a high protein diet in the past, and especially meat, you're going to have high levels of uric acid in your body. Uric acid is what destroys kidneys. Beans, lentils, peas, soy, and oats are the plant sources of purines that lead to uric acid accumulations. And many vegans supplement their diets with pea or soy protein. And you really, really don't want to do that, especially if you're highly acidic and have weak kidneys. Another source of uric acid is fungal infestation, because uric acid is one of the mycotoxins that yeast and fungi produce as a result of their metabolic activity. By the way, consumption of nutritional yeast, which is touted as a health food in vegan communities, is another source of excess uric acid. So I would not recommend it to anyone. If you have too much uric acid and calcium that is either being pulled from your connective tissue due to acidosis or is being consumed in the form of supplements that aren't being utilized, you're going to form calcifications, and they're going to be in your breast tissue. You're going to get hardened arteries. You're going to get bone spurs, and of course, kidney stones. So if you're too acidic, you shouldn't even consume too many leafy greens because they contain oxalates, which can also cause calcifications. And I'm going to sneak another question in here with regard to calcium and tie it into this discussion. Yes, you can have normal calcium levels in your blood and at the same time have a weak parathyroid. You see, it's not about how much calcium you have floating around, but how much of it your body utilizes. And this is exactly what causes the problem. When you have calcium that the body can't do anything with because the parathyroid isn't making enough of the catalytic parathormone, you get calcium deposits in places where you don't want them, like kidney stones. So just to wrap this little detour up, I want to say that, one, the dry fast didn't cause the kidney stone, and the weather certainly didn't have anything to do with it either. What the dry fast did do was enable the body to loosen and dislodge the stone that was already there blocking the kidney, so that now it could finally be removed. Let's get back to the progression and the timeline of the fast. I've covered the beginning and the end, which are marked by two important crises. But there's also a lot that happens in between those 2 points. Somewhere around day 3 or 4, you're going to notice that duration and quality of your sleep will begin to decline. And this phenomenon is progressive and it gets worse as the time goes on. You should expect it and accept it as the natural part of the process. If 4 days in, you may be sleeping 3 to 5 hours, by day 8, 9, you may only be getting 20 minutes of sleep per day in total. And this could be very, very difficult psychologically, though it's mostly to our conditioning, I believe. For me, there were times when I felt like I wanted to crawl out of my skin. But during my last dry fast, I followed Satmarga's advice, which was, instead of fighting and resisting this phenomenon, simply accept it as a normal part of the process. His advice is to look at it from a positive perspective, in that having all this extra time now enables you to do more things. I find that meditation can be very useful here in helping to relax. I also find that this inability to sleep is very much connected to the heat phenomenon that begins around day 5 or 6. And this is where the body is generating internal heat as a result of becoming a self-contained incinerator of toxic waste and inferior cellular structures. It's a thermodynamic process that is indicative of deep healing. Keeping yourself cool can make a big, big difference in terms of being able to extend the duration of your fast. You'll be able to go longer by making yourself more comfortable with air conditioning and ice packs. Get the ice packs that don't sweat, so that you're not absorbing condensation through your skin. And I suggest that you get a bunch of them, because when you're in that state, there never seems to be enough ice packs. What ends up happening is that they keep melting quicker than you can refreeze them. And the most important thing is to keep cooling your head, because that's the one thing that's going to help you sleep. Usually my head feels so inflamed that my ears are burning. And nothing feels more soothing and blissful than an ice pack under my skull. That being said, you can expect to sleep only for short stretches of time, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour maybe. But you can have as many as 3 or 4 of these cycles throughout the day. So my goal is always to get as many of them as possible. Satmarga says that over time, with continued fasting, the heat and the sleep difficulties go away. He says that he now sleeps very well, averaging 4 to 5 hours daily, and that he no longer deals with this internal overheating. So these symptoms do improve with continued fasting and cleansing of the body, which sort of makes me think that the more stuff you have to clean out, the more you will experience this heat. But once the body is fairly clean, that they go away because there's not much left to clean on that deep level. Now, I want to talk about how to break the dry fast safely and correctly. How you break the fast is in some ways even more important than the fast itself. And this will largely depend on the length of your fast. If you're only doing 24, 36 hours, you can safely go straight to juicy, watery fruits like watermelon, mandarins, grapes, and so on. Of course, it's always better to start with liquids, but I'm going to talk about what's the most you can do without harming yourself. After 48 to 72 hours, that's up to 3 days, you can start with juice. I think I saw someone in the group say that they broke a 3-day fast with chocolate milk. I beg of you, please, please don't do that. This is how people die, by improperly breaking their fast. And then you have critics saying that it was the fasting that killed them. First of all, I really hope that it was at least a plant-based milk, which is still too concentrated, too high in fat, and hard to digest. But if it was pasteurized cow milk and with added sugar and cocoa, no less, then you are really asking for trouble. Animal products and dry fasting beyond 18 to 20 hours do not mix, period. I hope that you take my advice and use fresh pressed juice the next time. Now, after 4 days of fasting, aside from water, herbal tea is okay to break your fast. And when I say herbal tea, I don't mean Earl Grey or matcha. I'm talking about medicinal herbs like kidney tea, hilal tea, or 3-lung tea. That's the sort of tea I'm talking about. And you can squeeze some lemon juice in it if you like. Now, after 5 days, you should only break your fast with water. If you go straight to drinking undiluted juice, your intestine is going to seize up and you're going to spend the day curled up in a fetal position and in a great deal of pain. What I can tell you from my personal experience with longer fasts is that you can expect to feel much worse after breaking the fast than you did while you were on the fast. After fasting for 7 days, and I'm jumping to 7 because, 5, 6, it was still the same. So after 7, I could still swallow. But once I passed 9 days, it was as if my body forgot what drinking was and how it worked. This is important because you're not going to be able to just pick up a glass of water and start drinking. Your throat will spasm and close up, which could cause you to choke. So instead, you'll have to take some water into your mouth and swish it around for 2 to 3 minutes, allowing your mucosa to slowly absorb it. And then you're going to let that water slowly trickle down your throat. This is how you should drink your first glass of water. And it should take you about 15 minutes to finish the entire glass. Once you finish your first glass of water, you gotta wait at least an hour before you resume drinking. And once again, you want to go very slowly, taking small, tiny sips and taking breaks in between the sips. The first day of breaking a dry fast, longer than 6 days, you should only drink water. And here you're going to have the opportunity to capitalize on the healing momentum of your fast. Even though breaking the fast with water does shift the body into a different gear, you can still continue to keep cleaning and detoxing if you can stick with plain water for at least a few more days. It's kind of like driving. If on the dry fast you were going 150 miles an hour, on the water fast, you've dropped your speed to about 90 miles an hour. So yes, it's much slower, but 90 miles is still pretty fast. So you can maximize the benefits of fasting if after breaking the fast, you take your time before transitioning to juices. So after 2 or 3 days on water, you can move up to herbal teas with lemon and continue to do that for at least another couple of days. After the tea, you can start adding diluted juices. Personally, I just add fruit juice to my hilal and kidney tea mix with the ratio of 3 parts tea, 1 part juice. You can use the same ratio to dilute your juice with water if you are not into mixing it with tea. And then each day you increase the ratio of juice by 1/4 until you get to 100% juice. And then to transition from juice, you can start by adding small amounts of whole fruit and blending it with the juice. So if you're drinking grape juice, for example, you can just take a handful of grapes and throw it in the blender and mix it with juice. And each day, you keep increasing the amount of grapes in the juice to grapes ratio. So once you transition to full-on smoothies, you can then move to eating whole fruit. Of course, the best one to start with would be watermelon because it's so easy to digest. And after that, you're free to eat any whole fruit you like. And once you're fully on fruit, you can start to add raw vegetables, if that's your preference. So usually the rule of thumb is that the transition after breaking the fast should last as long as the fast itself. But if you're more experienced, then you can accelerate and shorten this process a bit. And when I say experienced, I don't mean better or superior. I'm simply referring to someone who has been doing extended fasting regularly for a long period of time. Because over time, the body becomes very accustomed to the process of switching from the fasted state to the refeeding stage. And it can adjust to it more easily because it sort of develops shortcuts on how to do this. Another thing I want to talk about is the psychological aspect with respect to extended dry fasting, which I think in some ways is even more important than the physiological one because it sets up the foundation for your fasting practice. And this foundation can either be built on rock or sand, depending on your attitude and belief systems. I want you to think for a moment about the difference in these 2 words, fast and famine. Both words mean absence of food, but psychologically, they have very different connotations. Famine is food deprivation that's imposed by external forces due to lack that is outside of one's control. This may be due to a drought, an economic collapse, or even a genocide. A famine is marked by great uncertainty. In a situation like that, you don't know if and when this unavailability of food will be resolved or come to an end, or if you're going to be able to survive it. Now, a fast is a completely different story. It's something that's undertaken through the agency of choice. It's done with a positive goal in mind and has clear, preset parameters. With fasting, you're in complete control of the process in the sense that you can shorten or extend the duration of the fast, and you know that there will be food and water easily accessible for rebuilding and regeneration. So as you can see, famine has a very stressful, uncertain, and negative connotation, whereas fast implies a self-directed, purposeful application of abstinence for physical healing or spiritual expansion. So it's not just starvation alone that gets the body healthy, but starvation that's done mindfully and out of a positive emotional intent and expectation. So the first most important step in preparing for dry fasting is framing the process as an exciting opportunity for healing and self-discovery. You should only ever dry fast from a mental state of ease, clarity, and joy. If you're fearful or distrustful of the process, or if you are dreading going without food and water, I would strongly advise against dry fasting because you're going to cause harm rather than create any sort of healing. A person coming from the state of peace and contentment can go without food and water for 50 days, like Swami Satmarga. But a person going on a hunger strike out of frustration or anger can be dead in 8 to 12 days. What I also see in people is that a lot of them are conflicted. They kind of want to do dry fasting, but they also are afraid because, you know, on the one hand, you have Satmarga, who is thriving and can go without food and water for really long periods of time. But on the other hand, then you have people like Dr. Robert Lockhart, who died after fasting for 3 days. And so people get really scared. My point is that if you are uncertain whether or not it's possible to go without food and water for long periods of time, or if you're afraid that there's something inherently harmful in doing so, then you're not ready for extended dry fasting. If you're not sure that this is something that can be done safely and with great benefit, then don't do it. You're better off pursuing some other healing modality. Your mental and emotional state determine the outcome of the fast. Another important thing people need to understand is that the body has its own autonomous consciousness, which is separate from yours. Even though we attach our sense of identity to the body, ironically, the body that you see in the mirror is only 43% human. That's not even half. What this means is that the other 47% of your DNA, well, not your DNA, but the DNA that's in or on your body, belongs to all kinds of creatures that have a tremendous impact on the body's condition and the processes that take place within it. The body is an ecosystem that we share with other life forms, much like the earth. This means that you have to recognize the body's autonomy. You have to recognize that it has its own personal agenda that may or may not be in line with yours. You have to respect the body. You have to treat it as the separate, intelligent entity that it is. So that it's not about imposing your will, your goals and desires onto the body and forcing it into extreme conditions that it cannot handle, but rather about working with it in cooperation and harmony. Learn to talk and, more importantly, listen to what it needs, what it wants, and also what it can or cannot do at any particular time. It's all about establishing a partnership with a clear feedback system. You must recognize your limitations when it comes to understanding the physiological processes that are taking place within the body's complex machinery. So when it comes to healing, you have to let the body lead. This means becoming sensitive to its signals and following its cues. And this is what makes the difference between pushing the body too hard when it's not in the right state, the way Robert Lockhart did, and ending up killing it, or strengthening and healing it. All right, so what about this Robert Lockhart? The other day, a friend of mine sent me a video by someone who's considered to be a reputable coach in the detox community. It's important that you know that this person herself has no experience with prolonged dry fasting, and she admits as much in the video. Yet she was sounding the alarm about the purported dangers of dry fasting beyond 36 hours, citing the case of Dr. Robert Lockhart, who died shortly after his 72-hour dry fast. Yeah, I believe it was 3 days. And so many people were blaming the fast, but in my opinion, that is not at all what killed him. Not exercising sound judgment and not applying the methodology correctly is what killed him. He was an elderly man who got pneumonia, and he decided to dry fast to get rid of it. And that was his first mistake. You should never, ever dry fast during an acute respiratory infection. As his condition went from bad to worse, he was rushed to the hospital where he was pumped full of drugs. This was the second mistake. Essentially, his fast was broken for him in the hospital when he was flooded by the poisonous infusion of pharmacological medications, which intoxicated and overwhelmed the system that was already under tremendous strain. Then as soon as he got out of the hospital, he jumped right back into dry fasting as if nothing happened. And that was the third strike that took him out. So this detox coach put forth that because during a dry fast, the body doesn't have any water, if you still have toxins left in your body, then the kidneys won't be able to remove them. That's why unless your body is completely squeaky clean, you should not dry fast for long periods of time. And she said that if you already are that clean, then what's the point of dry fasting anyway? In other words, why bother? All right, so let's unpack this woman's claims. Number one, she is absolutely wrong when saying that the body doesn't have water. We know that the body creates its own endogenous water by breaking down fat. And this water is cleaner and far more superior to any external source. Additionally, the body absorbs water through the skin as well as by breathing it into the lungs. I think that urination with significant sediment up to 5 times per day indicates that there is indeed enough water to remove waste byproducts. Number 2, claiming that not drinking water prevents the body from eliminating harmful toxins suggests that this person doesn't actually understand the basic mechanism of dry fasting and how it operates differently from water fasting. Just go back and remember that kitchen analogy I gave you. Additionally, asserting that a person has to already be super clean in order to be able to dry fast without suffering serious harmful consequences to their health is plain wrong. And I am the living proof of that. Believe me when I tell you that I am far from being all cleaned out, and I'm still very much lymphatically involved. Yet here I am. I survived 11 days without food and water fairly comfortably and without any ill effects. And this wasn't just like a one-off where I got lucky. No, I've been consistently fasting longer than 5 days for at least 2 years. And finally, our coach's assertion number 3, which is my favorite. If you're already clean, then why even bother dry fasting? What is the point? Well, I'll tell you, thank you very much. People who fast seriously don't just do it for physical reasons. In fact, the more you fast, the less you start doing it for health. What happens is that you come to realize that the fasted state raises your vibration and makes your body less dense, which allows you to access higher dimensional frequencies and information through the expansion of consciousness. I wanted to address this video because people watch stuff like that, especially when it comes from someone whom they regard as knowledgeable, and they get confused and scared. So when trying to discern what information is right or wrong, my advice is to follow those who have practical hands-on experience. In other words, people who have done it, live to tell the tale, and keep doing it. Dr. Filanov has successfully fasted thousands of people over the span of 2 decades. His standard model utilizes 11 days without food and water. Nobody died that we know of. And if anyone did die, Filanov would have been shut down. Satmarga has now fasted 50 days dry, and he feels outstanding. He has no health complaints. He also owns his own retreat where he supervises without incident a great deal of people who are coming to him on a regular basis to dry fast for considerable lengths of time. I myself had gotten to 11 days and I'm perfectly fine. In fact, I'm better than fine. So I would like people to dial down the hysteria and fear-mongering when talking about things that they don't understand and have no first-hand knowledge of. And knowledge is the key word here. You have to know what you're doing. Please educate yourself. Read Filanov's books. They have now been properly translated into English. Watch Satmarga's videos documenting his unbelievable fasts. And if you need to consult a coach to guide you, hire someone who actually has been doing it and not just picking up other people's uninformed opinions and misinterpreting anecdotal incidents without having the full picture. There's simply too much evidence that shows us just how resilient the body is and how regenerating dry fasting is. That being said, there are definitely instances and conditions and circumstances that do not allow for dry fasting. We already discussed hypercoagulation or thick blood. Another instance when you should never dry fast is if you have cirrhosis of the liver. The body achieves endogenous nourishment by breaking down fat into water and sugar. This is done by the liver, where it turns fat into ketones, which also happen to be very acidic. So if your liver is already in the state of degeneration, then one, you're not going to be able to apply this process effectively due to the organ's compromised function. And two, the acidic hit from the ketones will further degrade the condition of your liver. You should also not dry fast in cases of poisoning of any kind, be it chemical or from something like a snake or a spider bite. This is when water fasting is more appropriate, because you want to be diluting the toxins. It's not about flushing, it's about diluting the toxins before flushing them out. And this is what Lockhart should have done after his hospital visit, instead of going dry. And the same goes for cold and flu, where you are expectorating mucus. You want to keep hydrating the mucus to allow it to come out. And therefore, dry fasting would not be the right approach in this case. Another instance, and this is something that I only learned very recently, is this is important. Advanced cancer is another instance when dry fasting is actually counterproductive and can do more harm. We know that autophagy keeps weak and damaged cells in check. However, studies have shown that once tumors are fully established, autophagy actually protects cancer cells that make up those tumors. So in the beginning stages, autophagy prevents tumor formation. But once the tumors are formed, it actually makes them more resilient and resistant to treatment. So if you have tumors, you're better off going on a diet of grapes and lemons instead of trying to heal your cancer by dry fasting. Some other contraindications for dry fasting are obviously pregnancy and breastfeeding, tuberculosis, pneumonia, or other inflammatory infections of the respiratory system. You should also avoid dry fasting if you're underweight or dehydrated. People with advanced Alzheimer's are also told not to dry fast. There are some more conditions on this list. I don't remember all of them, but if you go to my blog on my website, find my article on the 7-day fast that I did, and I list them all at the end of the article. So do be sure to check this list out so that you know whether or not you are a candidate for extended dry fasting. And before I close this out, I want to list some instances when you should break your fast. I already mentioned the pulse. When it gets to 120 beats per minute and will not go down, it's time to break the fast. Another situation is when it becomes difficult to breathe, or if you have no more saliva in your mouth, or if you lose urine output. Now, this is a little bit where I'm on the fence here, because depending on how long you go, if you go like for a really long time, 11 days, maybe even longer, it's possible to skip urination for like a day, but then it comes back. So I would say if you do not resume urination after 24 hours and you are not an experienced faster, then break the fast. If you're experienced and you feel confident, see how it goes. See if you start going to the bathroom again. Another condition would be if you have persistent diarrhea on a dry fast. Now, your blood pressure is going to go down, but it's all a matter of degree. So if it gets too low or too high, that's another sign that you have to stop. Or if you get too dizzy or too weak to move. Now, some weakness is normal and you're going to have to deal with it. It doesn't mean that you have to stop. For years, almost 3 years, I had this where if I got up, everything would go black and I would start to see bright auras in front of my face. But as soon as I steadied myself, and stabilized, then I could move. So this is sort of something you're going to have to figure out for yourself. Once again, if you're new at this, it's better to break the fast because you don't want to hurt yourself. But it's a personal choice. You're going to have to sort of feel your body. And this is why it's so important to read the signs of the body. Because a lot of the times you're going to experience the dizziness and vertigo because you get up, there is a shift in the balance where the blood that's now been really thickened through dehydration cannot travel very fast to your brain. So there is a lag in there. So you will experience a moment of dizziness, but it will then stabilize and then you can walk around and you're fine. If you're like passing out, then definitely break the fast. And the final condition on this list, if you get emotionally out of control, when it becomes really difficult to just be. And this happened to me during my 9-day dry fast. I couldn't get comfortable. I didn't know what to do with myself. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. So it's almost like torture. So if you feel that way, it's time to come out of your fast. All right, so I think I covered as much as I could. And if you want to ask questions now, we can do that.
Ivanna, I would like to ask a question. You mentioned
Sure.
that you might feel worse after breaking the fast than during the fast itself. Now, why is it so, and what would be the best way to make this mild, to soften it?
Well, the way you soften it is by breaking the fast as gently as you can, right? So, like I said, start with liquids if you can, especially if you go longer. Now, the reason this is happening is that the body is shifting gear. It was in a very specific state where it had a lot of energy, right, to do all kinds of things. Now, as soon as you break the fast, you're in a completely different mode. Mm-hmm. As soon as you have any digestion, that takes away energy. So what happens, you actually start to feel weak as you break the fast, right? So because some of that energy is now getting diverted to digestion and processing. Another reason is that when you have weak adrenal glands, you come out of it after you haven't eaten or drank, your adrenal glands are in their natural state. Normally on a daily basis, when we drink juices, we eat fruit, it still provides a level of nourishment and stimulation to the adrenal glands. And when you don't have that, what happens is that you are faced with the actual condition of your adrenal glands. And sometimes it's not a pretty picture, right? So, and it's almost like your adrenal glands are struggling to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happens. And you know, since we're on the subject, I want to bring in another question here because it fits. Somebody asked about getting muscle cramps after the dry fast. Mm-hmm. So I understand it's not happening during the dry fast, but it's happening after. And of course, dehydration does cause muscle cramping. But this is more to me about adrenal weakness, because your adrenals regulate your mineral balance. They produce mineral corticoids, which utilize minerals, and adrenals are specifically responsible for magnesium, sodium, and potassium. So when you get the cramping, it's because you're deficient in these. You don't have enough. And the reason you're deficient is because the adrenals cannot catch up. You understand? So it's not that you lost a lot of nutrition during the fast. Actually, the body feels better. It's unloaded. Like I said, we don't need as much nutrition as we think. But it's due to the adrenal glands that are weak, and now the body's shifting gears and the adrenals are trying to catch up. So they're sort of, it's like, you know, the car that won't start and you have to try to turn it on a few times before it gets going. And while you are trying to get it going, you're feeling the deficit of those electrolytes that the adrenals are responsible to keep in balance. Okay?
Very interesting. And my second question is, what is the amount of liquids that is recommended after breaking the fast?
About 6 to 8 ounces that you're going to drink over the period of 15 minutes, especially anything that's after 6 days.
Mm-hmm. So
after 6 days, you can still drink. It's just that after 9, you just can't swallow. It just won't go. It's like your throat closes up. It's the strangest thing. But even then, you have to do it slowly. And it's more about letting your body absorb the water into the tissue rather than gulping it and have it just, you know, slosh around in your stomach. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is, you want the body to start absorbing into the tissues.
Yeah, so in liters, it would be around 2 liters, something like that, a day.
Oh, you're talking for the whole day?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you would, yeah, I would not do more than 2 liters. Mm-hmm. Because you want to do small increments, small sips, small amounts at a time, and sort of stretch it out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, guys, so let's open the question part. And out of the people who are present here and who posted their questions in the group, are there people like that here? That's the time to ask.
Yes, I would like to ask a question. Ivanna, thank you for answering my question about the muscle cramps.
Okay.
I would just like to know what I would do then in that case when I do get the muscle cramps. How do I deal with it?
You just got to massage. Please do, like somebody said, they were taking salt. Please, please, please do not take salt. That's inorganic chemistry that the body cannot utilize. It's also a stimulant for adrenals. People feel better because they're stimulating the adrenals. They're having a cup of coffee or, you know, electric shock, but that actually depletes them more in the long run. And also, please do not take Epsom salt. That is a sulfate isolate. That is sulfur, sodium sulfate. Please do not ingest Epsom salt ever. What sulfur does in auto industry, sulfur is used to harden rubber to make tires. And when it adheres to your intestinal wall, that's what it does to your intestine. It hardens your intestinal wall, and it's extremely difficult to remove. So my recommendation is avoid sulfur at all costs. What it is a suppressant. People take it for inflammation, but what it does, it suppresses. It doesn't heal anything. You stop taking your MSM and see what happens to your joints and your arthritis. It was gonna flare right back up. Okay, it heals nothing and it creates problems. And also sulfur feeds candida. Fungus loves sulfur and it makes them proliferate even more. So lots of good reasons to not have sulfur, and also don't have salt if you can help it. And salt is extremely dehydrating. So you're coming out of a dry fast, you're already dehydrated, you need to rehydrate your body, then consuming salt is the complete opposite of what you want to do.
Right. Now, does that apply to Epsom salt baths as well?
Yes, because you are absorbing through the skin.
Okay.
You can get, now you can take Himalayan salt bath, or Dead Sea salt bath. Take a full-bodied salt, because what Epsom salt is an isolate. It's a part, they took a chemical component that they isolated from a full-bodied salt, threw the rest out, and now you have an isolated chemical. You understand? That is not being balanced out by any other element. Or you can do like a magnesium bath. You understand? Stuff like that you can do, but don't do Epsom salt.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Speak up or forever hold your peace.
Sorry, I'm just trying to unmute myself. Yeah, so I've been doing a juice fast this week, and I've been dry fasting for 16 to 20 hours per day, and then today I'm now on 26 hours, which is my longest, so that's good. And I'm just trying to tie this into my life so I can make it livable for a long time. And I was wondering if I could incorporate, I think I can easily do juice fasting and dry fasting weekly with, and then I wondered if I could incorporate maybe a day or two of eating like raw, but how much would that slow down the cleaning of my GI tract if I incorporated the 2 days? It's more, I feel, for other people because if I'm going out with my partner, then at least I can have like a salad. I'm just trying to make it so it's easy for me long term, I think.
Well, think about it this way. It's like you're cleaning and mopping the floor, and as you're doing that, you're walking over the clean floor with muddy boots.
Right, okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
So you're still doing great.
Okay.
You're still doing great. But aside from that day that you had your salad, now tack on another 2 days that it's going to take to get all of that out.
Right, yeah.
You understand? So you're actually losing what? At least 2-3 days before that juice fast gets back to the point where you left off. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're making 2 steps forward, you're taking 1 step back.
So it would be better for me to just do 90 days juice with, I'm trying to increase my dry fasting every week, doing it every day for up to normally 16 to 18 hours. And then 1 dry fast weekly, which I'm in 24-hour dry fast, which I'm then increasing now to 27. So next week I'll do 28 and do it like that. And then just remain on juice for 90 days.
So my concern with this situation is the order of things.
Okay.
The problem I have is that you have your dry fast, and as you break your dry fast, you move to your heaviest food. You see?
The juice.
No, because you told me that when you break your fast, then you go and you have your salads and you eat.
No, I haven't done that yet.
Okay.
I'm on juice at the moment. So tomorrow,
Okay.
when I break
I
it, I'm
see.
going to do watermelon. But I wondered if maybe on Sunday I could have a day of salad and then go back to juicing on Monday.
So I would never break a dry fast and then go to heavier food. You understand? So before and after is when you want to have your lightest consumption.
I'm going to break it with water.
You understand? So if you want to insert fruit or salad, do it the day after. You understand?
Yeah.
Because that's going to make it harder for you to recover from the dry fast. You're giving your body too much, especially as you start to increase that duration.
Yeah.
All right. But look, you can still do it if you have that one day where you're eating raw, you're still kicking butt. Yeah, it's just, but it, but it will take longer because now you don't have a 90-day fast, because 90 days is what? 13 weeks?
Yeah.
And then let's say every week you're losing 2 days because you're eating solid food. So that is 26 days that you can subtract from the 90. Right? So now you have what?
I might be able to go longer, so maybe do a 4-month fast, but having those increments. I don't know.
There's no benefit. It's better to go less, but consistently. You understand?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Because it does make a difference, because if you're eating, you're not cleaning on the same level that you do when you're drinking juice.
Yeah.
And then when you then resume drinking juice, then it's going to take you some more time to clean up what you were eating before the juice can get to work. You see, so it's not just that one day you're losing more here.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I thought that might be your answer, but I just thought I'd ask. But,
so sometimes it's better to just buckle down and just do it, and then do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Well, not whatever because then you can undo. Like some people go to eating cooked food and potatoes and stuff like that, and then you go, what was the point of making yourself go through all that if you're just gonna get right back to where you were? So, but eating raw, that's fine. That's great.
Thank you for your talk. It was amazing. I've made loads of notes. So.
Well, you don't need to. This is going to be posted. You can always rewatch it.
Yeah, no, it's been good though. Thank you.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, guys. Does anyone else have questions? Because there are people who are present here who also posted things in the group.
Yes. Can I ask? So, how many capsules for probiotics can I take in order to increase the effect of it? Because until now I took for 1 month, but I didn't see big difference. Small, I would say.
Well, let me ask you, why are you taking probiotics? For what reason?
Because I have the weird feelings in my stomach, cravings, and yes. And
well, to deal with cravings, it's not about adding probiotics, it's about killing the parasites that are there.
Yes, I have taken Dr. Morse's Parasite M and G a few times, and yes, and I eat healthy salads. Yes,
well, you'd be surprised, but it can take a very long time to get rid of them. You know, I told the story of Hildy Larson, who is well known in the detox community. She's a coach, and she has been a fruitarian for like 13 years. And after 13 years, she had like a 5-foot-long round worm crawl out of her in the middle of the night. So it can take a very long time to kill them. You have to understand that if you have waste, like old waste in your intestine, they burrow in it, and taking parasite herbs won't kill them because that chemistry cannot get to them. they hide in biofilm and they hide in waste. You understand? So it's about doing two things simultaneously. It's about cleaning the intestine and killing the parasites. I know people who've been getting parasites out for years. What was this person in front of mine? She's 6 years now. She keeps getting them out nonstop. Liver flukes, all kinds of worms. You can be so infested that it's crazy. But I don't generally recommend probiotics because the body has the ability to repopulate the gut. Your appendix is a reservoir of bacteria that you need. And the bacteria that you have in your body depends on the food that you put in it. Now, the only time I recommend a probiotic and a very specific type of probiotic is when we were talking about food addiction and a person not being able to break the cycle because of the addiction. So we go to the probiotic because the person cannot get to the place where they clean up their diet enough that they can establish a better flora, a better bacterial balance. You understand? So we're just trying to help them to deal with the issue that's preventing them to be able to do that. But this is an automatic process that happens. And I don't really see, and I have to tell you, because, for example, Filanov in his book recommends that when people come out of a long dry fast, that they take a probiotic. Satmarga says no. I've tried both, and I can tell you from experience that I did not see any advantage from taking probiotic, after a dry fast. There was no difference for me.
Yes.
So I think the issue is more about cleaning the intestines, getting out the stuff, and continuously doing parasite cleanses. So what I would do, you do a course of parasite cleanse, and what you have to do is you have to do it again after about a month, because these herbs will only kill adult parasites, but these worms, they lay eggs. So if you go on a course of parasitic herbs for a month, you kill the adults, but the eggs remain. The eggs really are embedded deeply. So within a month, those eggs hatch, and you have baby worms now that are going to grow and become adults. So if you did not do a follow-up course within 30 days, then you'll never catch up. So I don't know how you did it, but you have to do it at least twice, and there has to be a month in between. And I would actually repeat it, come back again a month later and do it again, just to make sure. Because
Yes.
you're going to have eggs in there. It's not just about the live worms that are there. They reproduce, right? They have babies. And these herbs, unfortunately, don't kill eggs.
Yes, but another problem with me is that I eat 2 salads
Mm-hmm.
in a meal. So I consider that that is a kind of food addiction. This is why I take probiotics, as you said, for
Okay.
addictions.
But even with those probiotics, they're not the way I recommend them. They're not to be taken long term. You understand? You do one bottle should be enough to repopulate the gut. Then maybe 2 months later, you repeat another bottle, but then you should be done. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, and
It shouldn't be something that you are relying on consistently.
and if this doesn't help me, means that it is not going to help me if I take more bottles.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
And one last question. If my mother has ferritin, high ferritin,
Mm-hmm.
260, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Is this because of constipation and problem in the liver, because she has constipation, chronic constipation?
Well, liver is one culprit, yes. hyperthyroidism can cause this. But there's also a disease called hemochromatosis, which they say it's a genetic disease where your body absorbs too much iron from food.
But in the past, there was not this problem. Now appeared.
Okay, so it's probably the liver.
Yes. She has Hashimoto. And yeah.
All right, so see, now we're going back to thyroid. It could be both. You see, hyperthyroidism, when thyroid is overactive, can raise ferritin levels.
She has hypo.
But was she at any point hyper? Usually it starts out as hyper and then progresses into hypo.
Yeah.
Then it's more likely the liver.
Okay.
Okay, guys, who else wants to ask the question?
Yeah,
Rory, yeah, you posted your question in the group.
Hi, Ivanna, thank you again for such a wonderful webinar.
You're welcome.
It's so informative and very inspiring. I'm somebody who would really like to incorporate fasting and dry fasting more into my life. But as I mentioned in the last one that you did, that I'm diabetic type 1.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to know from your experience with type 1 diabetics, because, as you know, type 2 is quite a different beast altogether.
Yes.
Type 1, they always recommend, it's a contraindication or whatever for fasting as because of the risk of ketoacidosis. So last time you gave me the helpful hint of just monitoring my blood sugar. It mustn't go below 2.6.
Mm-hmm.
But in your research and in your experience and study of particularly Filonov's works, does he mention long-term dry fasting for type 1s as acceptable in general, or not?
I don't recall specifically type 1s, but the thing is, aside from fasting, you have to work on your pancreas. Actually,
Okay.
two things, pancreas and parathyroid. So type 1 is when you are not making insulin. Your beta cells and your pancreas are simply not producing it.
Right.
So for you, I would be on one, you have to detox, so what is your diet like outside of fasting?
Okay, well, I did that long liquid feast or solid food vacation.
Yes.
I did that for 90 days recently.
Excellent.
And, beyond that, I was actually quite strict on a raw food diet for about 6 months and probably on and off raw food for about 5 years. But, really struggling with the diabetes because it was misdiagnosed for 3 years, unfortunately, also as type 2. I'm type 1.5, actually, not type 1.
So wait, you're both?
So,
you're type 1 and type 2?
So type 1.5, I produce a little bit of insulin.
All right, so this is interesting. This is very interesting because then you have three things here. You have adrenal glands, right? That's sugar metabolism. You have pancreas and you have parathyroid. This is a fairly recent discovery, is that calcitonin, which is produced as a result of parathyroid signaling, also signals to the pancreas to produce insulin. So you have to address all three glands, all right?
Really?
So the thing is with these types of issues, especially like diabetes and especially type 1, where it's a deep genetic weakness, you have to rebuild your pancreas, and food alone, diet alone, and juicing alone is not enough. You have to be on herbs, and for your pancreas, I would be taking pancreatic glandulars. You should be on fruit. This is how you improve your blood sugar. You have to understand that taking insulin is a hormone that carries glucose through the cell membrane. But when you are taking in artificial hormone, the gland that produces that hormone naturally stops doing so. Imagine if somebody was giving you $5,000 a week, you're gonna say, well, I'm gonna quit my job. I'm getting money anyway. Why should I go to work, right? And this is what your pancreas is doing. By taking insulin into your body, you're discouraging or preventing your pancreas from getting back into gear. So
Right.
I would be on pancreatic glandulars. I would be on pancreatic herbs. I would be on parathyroid glandulars. I would be on adrenal herbs at the least. You have to look at your eyes if you have adrenal weaknesses. And if you do, then I would go on adrenal glandulars as well. And you gotta get your kidneys to filter, because kidneys is how you get healthy. Kidneys is what removes the lymph and the acids that are actually destroying your pancreas. So you can't fix your pancreas by taking herbs and taking glandulars. You're trying to sort of turn it on. Also with fruit, there's no danger in eating all fruit with diabetes. What you have to be aware of is that when you go on all fruit, there will be a period of a few weeks where you're going to go through initial sugar loading. So what's going to happen is that you're going to eat fruit and it seems like your blood sugar goes up. So you take your reading, right? And you see that it's, I don't know, whatever the readings are. But you have to actually only take insulin by adjusting that reading, lowering by about 30 points. Because that initial rush of sugar is going to subside very quickly. So if you take insulin for the reading that you see, your sugar is actually going to drop too low. And then you're going to have to take your insulin. You understand? So when you go on fruit, there are going to be a temporary, very short spike that your meter is going to show very high, but it's going to come down like within 15, 20 minutes. You understand? So when you take insulin, take less than the reading requires.
Okay.
You understand? Because if you take the amount that's appropriate for that reading, that is almost like a false reading. You understand? Because then that's going to drop very quickly, and then it's going to drop lower than you want it to be because you've taken too much insulin.
I've actually had this experience. So when I first switched, when I was first actually put on insulin, I had to go through that whole phase. Actually, I know exactly. Yeah. It's been actually very interesting to see how exactly your insulin resistance also works in your body, how it changes to diet. I've seen all these this within myself. So, you know, as a non-diabetic, you don't actually understand, but when you're a diabetic, you can really easily see how certain foods and how a diet over long term can change your insulin resistance. It's been quite interesting.
You will actually need insulin more if you're doing vegetables. Okay. Because they're mostly glucose. Fruits are mostly fructose. Fructose does not require insulin. Glucose does. You will do better on fruit because of that. You'll require less insulin.
Yeah, out of interest, on the 90 days of juice, or mostly juice, my insulin resistance was par excellence. It was, I was using such little insulin. It was amazing. Now refeeding, I've incorporated quite a bit more fats and
fats are
and
very
stuff
bad
like
for
that.
diabetes.
Now I'm taking huge amounts of insulin with little effect. Yeah. So just for everybody out there, insulin resistance is a real thing, and fat intake in your diet.
No good. Absolutely.
Doesn't even matter if it's healthy fats, avocados or nuts.
There's no such thing as a healthy fat. People need to, even avocado. There have been studies that show that having fat in your intestine inhibits the motility and contractility of the lymphatic vessels. What this means is that it thickens the lymph so much, eating fat actually changes the viscosity of your lymphatic fluid, makes it thicker and more globulated so it doesn't move, so you can detox. You understand?
Yeah.
So fat is actually not okay. You don't need fat, you need fatty acids, but fruits already have them. There's the difference between protein and amino acid. You don't need protein, you only need amino acids. But amino acids are already in every fruit, vegetable, and blade of grass. Except when you do protein, your body has to go through 3 to 4 very grueling processes to break these proteins down into amino acids. So it's like somebody telling you, you know, it's much better for you to earn $100 in 4 days than in 2 hours. You'd say, well, that's dumb. But this is what is happening when your doctor tells you that protein, which is a peptide or a polypeptide, is a superior way for you to get, you know, building blocks in your body. This is not true, because your body cannot use protein. It cannot do anything with it. And it's the same with fats. The fats need to be broken down into fatty acids is what the body uses. Once again, you have to make your body work harder to do that.
Yeah. I think what you're saying there, Ivan, is probably the biggest game changer of the century. You know, it's probably at the turning point of in dietetical studies or whatever it is, you know, that contribution of low-fat, raw, vegan, it's probably the biggest game changer anybody can apply to their diet. Yeah.
But this is, it's crazy, the lack of logic and lack of understanding. Doctors will have diabetics eat bread and tell them to avoid fruit, but a bread is actually a polysaccharide, which means it actually has 100 times more sugar than a piece of fruit. And the only reason you cannot taste the sugar in bread, that it has to break down. And by the time it breaks down to the point, to the simple sugars that you could taste it, it's too far down your GI tract, so you can't taste it.
Correct.
Because it's a polysaccharide. You have your complex sugars, di and polysaccharides. Your simple sugars, you have glucose and fructose and galactose, but that's for milk and we don't want that. So it's always, of course, easier for your body to digest and utilize simple sugar.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that in myself. I can say that from my own personal experience, that everything that you said there is absolutely true. You know, monitoring the blood sugar on different diets and seeing exactly how it's all affected. And I can say also that saturated fats we should stay away from pretty.
Yes.
I've noticed that has a very bad effect on my body. If I have coconut milk and stuff like that, it even has a double.
Avocado, it's too heavy. I see it. If I have an avocado, the next day I wake up puffy and swollen, like this, because it's mucus forming. It's too much fat.
Okay, cool. So just proceed with safety and do a lot of pre-detox detox stuff for the dry fast. Other preparations, work on the glands. Thank you, Ivanna.
You're welcome.
Okay, guys, who else has question?
Ivanna, it's me. I just have 2 short questions. Connie here. I'm actually on my, I think, 42 day of tooth fast.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it's really easy actually. And I feel like the more I increase the dry fast, and I do every other day 24 hours, and then the weekend I try longer. So it's easy. So my question to you is just confirming, if I use herbal powder, I'm breaking the fast, right? Powder. Can I put powder, so comfrey powder, in the juice?
Wait. Let me see if I understand. Are you breaking your dry fast with juice that has herbs in it?
Now, the question that I have for you: am I breaking the juice fast if I'm incorporating powdered herbs?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because I've been using
it's negligible. It's not, and the thing is, especially now, you're on 45 days in, and I think initially I told you not to take lymphatic formulas. But now I would add a lymphatic formula, but either powder or capsule, because that's going to help to pull on your intestinal wall.
Okay.
Not liquid, because liquid is going to go into every tissue. But, you know, when you go into intestine, it doesn't, especially when you still have stuff there, it doesn't get utilized into all the body parts. It's going to stay sort of confined there. But it's very good to get that lymphatic action and pull on your intestinal wall to give it a deeper clean.
Okay. Okay. So which means I also can use once in a while. So I incorporate comfrey herb, and sometimes I put it in a juice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean,
Okay.
look, on these, liquid diets, it's actually recommended that you do take GI broom, because that's the time to take it, because you have nothing but GI broom in there. The thing is with juicing, you're still having digestion. So it's not like when people go dry, which I don't understand how they take herbs on a dry fast. So you're still eating, you understand? So it's not that big of a difference, really.
Yeah. Yeah,
and powder is fine enough where it's not gonna
totally interfere with.
It's not gonna hinder. Yeah, it's not gonna hinder you too much. No.
Okay, wonderful. And then the second question of you, I'm listening and seeing people who are on juice fast, and they are kind of like, a lot of people, they are recommending, God, you have to, if you're on an extended juice fast, you have to drink a lot of juice, and I don't know, like 3 gallon or something crazy. And for me, it's like, to be honest with you, sometimes I'm fine with 64 ounces. I don't know. And I also, like, whenever I'm like, I keep my juicing window, I'm not like this. So I'm dry fasting 24 hours and then juice fasting a day. I'm juice fasting. I'm not juice fasting the whole day again, like, because it's, for my teeth. So I keep it in a window of 2 or 3 hours. So the question that I have for you, people recommend to drink a lot of juice for whatever, hydration, and we talked about.
Well, you can't do it because you have such a small window, because then you overburdening the system. You understand? The body can't digest such a large volume at once. But what you're doing, you got to be careful, because you could be doing too much. Now that you're dry fasting every other day and you're only drinking this much juice. Like, this is something you could do for a short period of time, but then you got to get off, and then you got to start and get some food in you.
Okay.
You understand? Because there is such a thing as doing too much.
Okay. Well, I don't want to break my juice fast. So maybe I will downsize the 24 hours.
Or maybe, or the thing is, I'd rather you fasted once a week, but you went longer. You understand? You'll get more benefit from that than doing 3 24-hour stretches.
Yeah.
You see? It's actually less beneficial than, let's say you go for 48 hours and you only do it once a week. You'll get more out of that.
Got it. That's
so
also
it's about being efficient.
Yeah, that's what you're referring to, what you said earlier about the, about the phases.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much. And again, thank you for sharing all your knowledge. Thank you, Eric, as well.
Of course. My pleasure.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Okay, I don't know if I'm repeating myself again. Is there anything you can, what bothers me is aging, and I've got the condition of osteoporosis and menopause. Is there, if you already talked about everything, I'll go back and watch the other webinars. If there's anything you can add in general, anti-aging, and how to.
The only thing I can add, now understand that the same thing that gives you wrinkles and loose skin is the same thing that's causing osteoporosis. Okay.
Actually, I don't have problems with the skin.
Well, you said anti-aging, so what is the issue?
Collagen, and the fact that, I mean, we age. I mean, I don't have.
You do.
I want to prevent it before it happens. It's not like I'm aging, but before it starts. The collagen, I know that it's not the same. It's not the skin, but what's underneath it. Everything shrinks. My skin is okay, maybe thanks to all the diets, but everything shrinks, and it's not the same.
Sure, but also, you said, I believe you said that you're going raw now. When you transition, at first you're going to look worse. So don't freak out, because that turns around. I mean, for the first 3 months, I think I looked like a 3-day-old corpse. I was gray. It was not a pretty picture, you know, but then you snap back. Okay. So it's okay. Don't freak out. It just happens. But to maintain elasticity of your skin, you need calcium, right? Same for your bones. I'm going to go back to parathyroid glandulars, bone and connective tissue formula from Dr. Morse. Okay. You need your adrenals, because your adrenal glands are the secondary source of your steroid hormones. Okay. Now, if you have things like hot flashes, dryness, and stuff like that, take black cohosh. Black cohosh is an estrogenic herb.
That doesn't bother me so much as it is the looks and the fact that I'm scared of osteoporosis, if the bones break or something like that. And also, yeah, the face, the skin,
Well, the only way you're going to improve, you have to understand something. You cannot regenerate in an acidic medium. It doesn't matter what you take. Here's what I see in myself, okay? My lower body, my legs are extremely acidic, high uric acid, deep, deep, deep genetic weakness. Lymph does not move. You know, with all this fasting, I lose muscle, but I only really get these repercussions in my legs, and I cannot rebuild. I can rebuild everything else. My upper body, my arms, lymph is moving, no problem. There's no fatigue, none of that. But no matter what I do, I cannot rebuild my legs. Why? Because they're too heavily involved lymphatically, and there's too much acidosis there. So it doesn't matter what I take in until I get the lymph moving and get these acids out. No matter how much I work out, I can't get it back to where it used to be, you understand? And I see the difference. There are certain parts of my body where the lymph is moving, there's no stagnation, not a problem. After the 11 days of not eating or drinking, I did not lose muscle, I did not lose any strength in my arms, but my legs, I could hardly walk. And very difficult for me to exercise. So it's not about taking things. You're gonna have to clean your body. You cannot rebuild in an acidic medium, period. I don't care what you take, and this is the problem. You have to move your lymph. You have to get your kidneys to open up so you can remove that lymph. You understand?
So it's
in the interim, all of these things that I'm telling you, take herbs and glandulars, we're trying to basically shock your body back into life. Like, you know, when you are unconscious, you take the paddles, the electric pedals to electrocute back to life. This is what we're trying to do with your glands. You understand? We're trying to hit them really hard to get something from them. But the idea is, even if your gland works, you won't be able to rebuild certain parts until you get acids out of those specific areas. And you will see this in your body where certain parts are rebuilding and you see things changing and they look good, and there's certain parts that are not, no matter what you do. So it's the same body, right? Whatever you eat is supposed to go everywhere. So it's not like you take this supplement or you take this glandular and it only works, you know, for your face, or it only works for your arms. There's a reason why it only shows effects in certain parts, because this is where you've created, you have a healthier environment. Where you have acids, can't rebuild. So have to clean the acids out. This is diet. And to really clean the system out, you're going to need herbs. When you're heavily involved, you're going to need help, or it's going to take you forever.
And the dry fasting is inevitable, or if I live on raw food, that's okay? Or
you can do it on raw food. You don't have to dry fast at all.
Okay.
You don't. But the thing is that the dry fasting is accelerated. You understand? If you're doing it on food, it's going to take longer. But you can do a lot on food. You know, you can do a lot on juices like grapes and lemons and ginger. There is nothing I've seen like this. The guy I was working with could not get filtration at all. 6 months on juices, nothing. Gets diagnosed with cancer. Does the protocol of grapes, lemons, but I did have him on kidney glandulars. I had him on kidney herbs. I had him on adrenal glandulars and adrenal herbs, and doing the castor oil packs with cayenne pepper and turmeric on kidneys. His kidneys busted open in 4 days. On that protocol, it only took him 4 days, when he couldn't get anywhere in 6 to 8 months or something like that. So there are ways you can do it, but when you go so hard, it's gonna hurt more. Yes, his kidneys opened up, but how did it happen? He had a severe urinary tract infection, because now kidneys started to dislodge all the acids, and he's calling me, oh, I have burning urination and diarrhea now. Well, this is what happens. Imagine what the burn you're feeling when you're excreting the acids in urine. And this is what I felt on my last 2 fasts when I was passing kidney stones and so forth. This is what every cell feels, because these are the acids that are surrounding the cells, and some of them are in the cell. You understand? So the burn that you're feeling when it comes out of you, this is what your cells have been feeling for probably as long as you're alive. What do you think that's doing to them? Mm-hmm. Right? So this is what you got to think about. So prepare yourself that when you start to really get things moving, it's not going to feel good.
Short term, but in the long term.
Yes, yes. And also, if it does happen, let's say your kidneys open up, but it hurts, then you can back off of lemons and ginger for a time, because that's going to make you hurt more. And if you do have such burning, painful urination, then you can drink a solution of baking soda and water.
Do I have to be only, I started drinking lemons with ginger, but yes. I also eat other things, like vegetables. So do I have to be on lemon and ginger?
You have to be it's only grapes, lemon, and ginger.
For how long?
As long as it takes. I mean, you can go, let's say, go for a month, see what happens. You understand? And then maybe take a break, because vegetables are too heavy. Vegetables don't detox you. You understand?
Yeah.
Vegetables get you only to a certain point, but then you're going to reach a plateau where you're going to stop progressing. Vegetables are more for building, right? So once you clean yourself up and you know, you feel you're in a good place, then go for vegetables. But if you're trying to clean yourself up, vegetables are going to slow you down.
What about beet juice? You said beet.
Excellent. Beet juice is excellent. Strong.
Okay.
It makes nauseous.
So beet juice and lemons and ginger and grapes. Anything else? A melon? No.
Watermelon is good, but if you're going to do this, you understand, just for 1 month, do nothing but grapes. It's about, you understand, it's about bringing specific chemistry. Nothing is better than grapes. Grapes are the best detoxifiers, followed by watermelon, I would say. You understand? And then you have your lemons and ginger. That is like number 1. So the way you can do this, and I had to laugh because people were in the group claiming that I said things that I never said. So instead of going back to the video, they were playing broken telephone and getting bits and pieces together, formulating a completely different protocol of things. So let me clarify this. You can juice anywhere from 6 to 10 lemons with, if you're organic, with the skin. Don't discard the skin, right? You're gonna take a big hunk of ginger, bigger than your hand because you're a female, and you're gonna juice that together. Now that's gonna yield you a certain amount of juice. And here's where you have some options how you can do this. Now, if you are not diluting this juice, then what you can do is you can blend the grapes, throw them in a blender, and first of all this juice that you're gonna make from this amount of lemons and ginger, you're gonna split it into 3 parts. You're only gonna drink 1/3 at a time, okay? So one of the ways that I would probably prefer is to blend the grapes together with 1/3 of that juice and then drink them. Okay, so it's like a smoothie in a sense, but it's gonna be fairly thin. Or you can juice the grapes and also mix it with 1/3 of that juice. Now, the third option is you're eating the grapes normally, but then you're going to have to dilute that juice because it's going to be too strong. So if you're mixing the juice with either blended grapes or juice, grape juice, you don't have to dilute it because the blended grapes and juice will do that, right? But if you're eating the grapes then and wanting to drink the juice separately, then you're going to have to dilute that juice. So in my opinion, it's more palatable and easier to deal with it if you mix it with either blended grapes or grape juice, because grapes are really sweet, and get really dark grapes, as dark as you can get them. Mm-hmm. Those are the best. And they're also highly nutritious. So your skin is going to look beautiful. You're going to be glowing. Yeah.
Okay, so it's grapes, lemon, ginger, and beet. And beet, that's all.
I wouldn't even do beets. I would stay with just this for at least a month and see what happens to your body. Okay? Like, you're going to get things moving. Trust me.
It's not that I feel bad, but it's all these tests that show that the bone is, I lost bone mass. Mm-hmm. So it's not that I don't feel, and also that now that I'm into menopause, I'm afraid of aging. It's a preventive attitude. It's not that things are bad. I feel great. I feel everything's great, but I'm just scared.
Well, you gotta get out of the fear, you understand? Because it doesn't help. Like, remember I talked about the mentality and emotional state. If you are doing things out of fear, you're never going to be successful.
Yeah, I want a healthy lifestyle for the long run. I'm feeling fine, but I'm afraid that before things start getting worse, so I want to be prepared.
Well, you just do the best you can. You understand? Yeah. That's all you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. We only have one little question from someone in the group, and then I think we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So Angela is asking how to mentally. It's also about mental states. Yes. How to mentally stay focused and how to be with the thoughts mentally. How to be with the thoughts mentally has always been, it has always been the challenge to get through those 10 minutes of craving when smells or seeing water, with smells probably, that's what she meant, or seeing water and food. Best feelings are when you look back at an opportunity to break and you realize I'm fine and that I did it. I am alive and more energized. So asking for tips and tricks or ideas to mentally stay busy. That's what she says.
Well, it's not about staying busy. It's not about pushing things away. The trick that I use, I don't know if this is going to help anybody else, but the way I do it, when I have a craving, instead of trying to deny it or push it away, what I do is I play a game with my mind where I said, yes, you're going to get this. You understand? But it's going to be 3 days from now. And while I'm waiting for this, like I really go into the fantasy. I create the best fantasy, what it's going to look like, what it's going to taste like, how I'm going to prepare it, where I'm going to buy it. You understand? I keep myself busy with anticipation. You understand? So it's just a matter about what you're telling your body and your, ego in this case is that you're definitely getting this. You're going to get what you want. You just need to wait a little bit before you get it. You understand? Mm-hmm. And that calms it down because you'll see that an hour from now, you don't even want it. By the time you break your fast, the thing that you thought you really wanted is making you gag. You don't even want to look at it. So it's all about not trying to resist, because resistance is what makes it persist, actually. So this works for me. I don't know if it's going to work for the person asking the question, but she can try or he can try.
Amazing, amazing. Ivanna, my last question is, if anyone from our viewers, audience, wants to take you as their personal coach throughout this fasting or dry fasting process, could you please elaborate on your style of work, you know, the program, how it goes, you know, how it goes with your clients?
It depends, because every client has different needs and goals, you see, so it depends on the person. And it also depends what people are willing to pay for, you know, because I have different options. Some people, you know, if you want like the whole thing, you get the iridology reading, you fill out a questionnaire, you get your iridology report that runs between 40 and 60 pages. It's very in-depth. You're going to know what's going on with your body. And then we also have an hour to talk. You know, whatever questions you have, I tell you what to do, what not to do, things like that. Okay? So I tried the idea of having like a package where you pay a certain amount of money for the month, but it wasn't really getting, so, you know, you buy an hour appointment. So we give you, what I do, I give you a protocol. I give you what to do. And when you sort of feel like you've progressed to a certain point, you need to switch things up, or you have problems, something's happening, then you can book another appointment. So it all depends, you know, on what a person wants, with what their financial situation is, and so on.
Okay, very, very good. Very well, very good. Okay, guys, so we're going to wrap it up. I just want to say that I will post below the video, first of all, Ivanna's details, how to contact her website. So if you are interested, please do. She has wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure she can provide an amazing service. And I'm also going to post my WhatsApp number in case you want to join WhatsApp fasting, weekly fasting group. And the last thing I want to say, that this information that has been provided in this video is for the informational purposes only, and it is not a medical advice. And I want to thank you, Ivanna, from the depth of my heart. I have no words, you know, to describe the value of those webinars, and it's just out of this world. It melts my heart. It melts my heart to know that you are with us and that you are.
You're too kind, Eric. You're too kind. Thank you.
No, you're not too kind. You're amazing. You're fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So have a nice weekend, everyone, and thank you, Ivanna, again. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ivanna.
Bye-bye.